Whether you love him or hate him, there's no denying SpongeBob is a beloved cartoon show. But with over 300 episodes, not all of them are Bikini Bottom gold. So today I'm watching the most hated SpongeBob episodes of all time to figure out what went wrong, why fans hate them, and whether they're truly that bad. Starting with an episode that sits at a deceptively high 4.9 rating on the charts, Ink Lemonade. Now, a 4.9 out of 10 is not great by any stretch, but in the most hated episodes, it's practically a fan favorite. But don't let that number fool you. This one is a perfect example of where modern SpongeBob started to go wrong for a lot of people. The premise is simple enough: classic SpongeBob and Patrick shenanigans, really. Patrick, in his infinite wisdom, decides he wants to open a lemonade stand. The only problem? He doesn't have any lemons. He doesn't even seem to know that lemons are a key ingredient in, lemonade. He's just selling glasses of water. Squidward comes out to mock him and, out of pure spite, throws a rotten, bruised lemon at him. Now, this is where the episode starts to go seriously weird. Patrick puts the single rotten lemon into his pitcher of water, and his first customer, after drinking it, gets violently ill and throws up inside Squidward's house. Okay, a little gross, but still within the realm of cartoon logic, I guess. But then SpongeBob shows up, and the whole thing just goes off the rails. In an attempt to get more lemonade, Patrick starts squeezing a toy fire truck, getting red paint into the mix. Then SpongeBob, trying to be helpful, sneaks up behind Squidward and screams into a megaphone. This sudden shock causes Squidward to spray a thick, black ink directly from his nose into Patrick's pitcher. It's a biological defense mechanism for octopuses, sure, but the visual is just unsettling. And what do our two heroes do with this terror-induced nasal fluid? They decide to sell it. SpongeBob takes the first sip, has a bizarre, almost seizure-like reaction, and then declares it delicious. This is the new product: black lemonade made from the ink Squidward involuntarily produces when he's terrified. And the rest of the episode is just SpongeBob and Patrick finding increasingly cruel and horrifying ways to scare Squidward to harvest more of his ink. It stops being about two dumb neighbors annoying Squidward and becomes about two entrepreneurs systematically torturing someone for profit. They show him Patrick's internal organs. They let a giant, creepy sea spider named Mildred into his house, a creature that would give anyone nightmares. They build a full-on haunted house attraction outside his front door, complete with a creepy nursery and a puppet of a future, decrepit Squidward. Each scare results in more ink, which they happily collect in pitchers and buckets. Squidward is reduced to a paranoid, whimpering wreck, unable to tell what's real anymore. The core of the problem here is the complete lack of empathy from SpongeBob. Patrick being this clueless and cruel is sadly pretty common in these later seasons. But SpongeBob is supposed to be the moral center, the one who, despite his naivete, is fundamentally kind. Here, he's a willing participant in the psychological destruction of his neighbor. The episode ends with Squidward trying to sell his own ink, only for the customers to be disgusted when they realize the source. Then, as a final nail in the coffin, SpongeBob and Patrick sell him cookies made with spider eggs, causing him to scream as baby spiders crawl out of his mouth. So, is it truly a bad episode? In my opinion, yes. It's one of the first truly mean-spirited Squidward torture episodes where the torment goes far beyond simple annoyance. I'd personally rate it lower, maybe a 3.5, but believe me when I say the cruelty we see here is just a warm-up. It gets so much more bizarre and uncomfortable from here. Next up, we have a tie, 2 episodes sitting at a 4.5 rating: Squiditis and Demolition Doofus. Let's start with Squiditis, because while Ink Lemonade was about the torture of Squidward, this one is all about the torture of SpongeBob, specifically self-torture. It kicks off with a relatable premise. Squidward is stuck at work on a beautiful day and desperately wants to go home. He sees a customer sneeze and gets a brilliant, albeit lazy, idea. He'll fake being sick to get out of work. He tells SpongeBob he has a scratchy throat, dry mouth, and an itchy eye, dubbing it the Squid's disease. SpongeBob, being the gullible and overly empathetic sponge he is, completely falls for it. He's horrified at the thought of Squidward being ill, and even more horrified at the idea of catching it himself. Mr. Krabs, of course, doesn't buy it for a second. After a quick and inadequate physical, he declares Squidward fit as a fiddle and orders him back to work. But SpongeBob's paranoia is now in full swing. He puts on a gas mask to serve patties, which Squidward soon sneezes into, sending SpongeBob into a panic. The chaos he causes convinces Mr. Krabs that, for the sake of business, he needs to send Squidward home anyway, just to calm SpongeBob down. So Squidward gets his wish. He gets to go home and relax. But this is where the episode stops being about Squidward's scheme and starts becoming genuinely hard to watch. SpongeBob, now alone, starts to feel his own eye itch. His throat feels scratchy. His mouth feels dry. He convinces himself he has contracted the fake disease, and his attempts to cure himself are just brutal. He follows some half-remembered grandma's folk remedies and starts by sticking his his feet in hot water, then cold water. Then, horrifyingly, he dunks his feet into the deep fryer, cooking them to a crisp. To hide the blemishes from Mr. Krabs, he smears spicy mustard all over his fried legs, which obviously just makes the pain worse. Then he tries to cool them with pickles, thinking they're like cucumbers, and the vinegar makes him scream in agony. He ends up a garbage-covered, self-mutilated mess, and the customers are so repulsed that they leave, forcing Mr. Krabs to send him home. The humor is supposed to be in SpongeBob's hypochondria, but the execution is so visceral and painful that it just doesn't land. It's uncomfortable. When he finally shows up at Squidward's house to recover together, you can't even blame Squidward for being annoyed. The episode ends with Mr. Krabs also faking the disease after failing to run the Krusty Krab himself, which is a weak punchline to a deeply unpleasant story. So is Squiditis really that bad? It's not as mean-spirited as other episodes on this list, but it's one of the most misguided. It mistakes painful imagery for comedy. The 4.5 rating feels a bit generous. It's not an episode that makes you angry, just one that makes you squirm and wish you were watching something else. It's a solid 4.0 in my book, mostly for just being a drag to sit through, but it's far from the worst episode on this list. Now for the other 4.5, an episode that takes a character we know and love and pushes them into the territory of a genuine psychopath. I'm talking about Demolition Doofus. This episode centers on Mrs. Puff, SpongeBob's long-suffering boating instructor. We all know the drill. SpongeBob takes his driving test, he crashes, Mrs. Puff inflates. It's a classic gag, but this episode decides to ask, what if we took that gag to its most extreme and horrifying conclusion? During yet another disastrous driving test, SpongeBob crashes so badly that he ruptures Mrs. Puff's inflation sac. The doctor at the hospital delivers the grim news. She'll never be able to puff again. She is, for all intents and purposes, crippled. SpongeBob, with stunning insensitivity, makes a joke saying, "From now on, I guess we'll have to call you Mrs. Pop." This is the moment Mrs. Puff snaps. And I don't mean she gets angry. I mean she has a complete psychotic break. Her eyes fill with rage and she physically attacks SpongeBob, strangling his nose and screaming about how it's all his fault until a doctor has to tranquilize her. This is already a huge departure for her character. She's been frustrated, she's been driven to madness, but she's never been genuinely, physically violent and hateful like this. But it gets so much crazier from here. While wheeling her through the hospital, SpongeBob sees a group of injured fish who are part of a demolition derby. The doctor explains that they risk their lives for the amusement of others. A light bulb goes off in Mrs. Puff's head. She imagines SpongeBob being smashed to bits in the derby, a fantasy that sends her into a fit of hysterical, evil laughter. She sees a way to finally be rid of SpongeBob forever. She convinces SpongeBob that entering the derby is a way to earn extra credit for his license. She introduces him to the derby manager as a natural-born destroyer, and they give him a scary new identity, Lee Squish. What follows is supposed to be a series of funny accidents. SpongeBob, being an awful driver, unintentionally takes out all the other, much tougher competitors. He has no idea what he's doing, but his cluelessness makes him unstoppable. But the whole time, we're watching Mrs. Puff in the stands, growing more and more enraged that her murder plot is failing. She's not rooting against him in a funny, rivalrous way. She is genuinely, furiously trying to have him killed. And when he's the last one standing, she decides to take matters into her own hands. She steals a giant monster truck, dubs herself the Huff, and chases SpongeBob down with a clear and explicit intent to crush him into oblivion. The climax of the episode is a teacher trying to murder her student with a monster truck. It's insane. The chase ends with them crashing into the boating school, and in a final ironic twist, the impact somehow fixes Mrs. Puff's inflation sac. The building collapses on them, and the last shot is of them both injured, with Mrs. Puff flatly saying, "Things are perfectly normal." Is it a bad episode? Oh yeah, it takes Mrs. Puff's character, a character defined by her patience being tested to its absolute limit, and turns her into a stone-cold would-be murderer. There's no comedy in it, just a grim and uncomfortable plot that feels completely alien to the world of SpongeBob. The 4.5 rating is baffling to me. This is one of the worst examples of character assassination in the entire series. It throws away years of established personality for a cheap, dark, and unfunny plot. This one deserves to be way down the list, easily a 2.0 or lower. Dropping down just a tick to a 4.4 rating, we have The Nitwitting. This episode is a bit different from the previous ones. It's not necessarily hated for being overly cruel or for its body horror, but more for just being, well, dumb. And not in the clever, funny way that classic SpongeBob and Patrick were dumb. This is just lowest common denominator, nonsensical idiocy. The episode sees Patrick taking SpongeBob to his secret club meeting for the Empty Head Society. a place where people can give their powerful intellects a much-needed rest. To join, you have to literally check your brain at the door. SpongeBob, eager to join in on the fun, happily pulls his own brain out of his head and joins the society of fez-wearing simpletons. The rest of the episode is just a series of gags about how stupid everyone in the club is. They have a club president called the Ice Cream King. They have a bizarre initiation ritual where they pass around a jar of saliva. SpongeBob, thinking they're supposed to drink it, chugs the whole thing, which grosses everyone out. The main event is the Nitwitting, where the club goes out to perform their civic duty, which in reality is just causing mindless chaos and destruction around Bikini Bottom. They smash bowling balls into people's faces, run over Larry the Lobster with a mini boat, and break parking meters with baseball bats. SpongeBob starts to question if this is really civic duty, which makes the Ice Cream King suspect he's not dumb enough for the club. This leads to a truly bizarre sequence where SpongeBob's last brainstem shrivels up, and he becomes completely brainless, wandering around town acting goofy and forgetting how to sit. The problem with the Nitwitting is that it's just not very funny. The humor relies entirely on, haha, look how stupid these characters are, but there's no wit or charm to it. The saliva drinking scene is just gross for the sake of being gross. The destruction they cause isn't clever or well choreographed, it's just random mayhem. The episode feels like it was written based on a mockery of SpongeBob's dumb humor, without understanding what made that humor work in the first place. Patrick's stupidity in early seasons was quite endearing, and led to funny situations because of his skewed logic. The stupidity in the Nitwitting is just loud, obnoxious, and pointless. The resolution is also a complete cop-out. SpongeBob gets his brain back, feels bad about the mess, and goes to clean it up, only to find that Sandy has already fixed everything with her own club, FEMA, which stands for Fix the Empty Head's Mess Again. It sounds like this happens all the time, which makes the whole thing seem even more pointless. In my opinion, this episode isn't offensive, just aggressively unfunny. The 4.4 rating feels about right. It's mediocre, forgettable, and a perfect example of the show just spinning its wheels. It's not a crime against the characters like Demolition Doofus, but it's a crime against comedy. It's boring, and for SpongeBob, that's a pretty big sin. Now we arrive at another tie, a pair of episodes both sitting at a 4.2 rating. Stuck in the Ringer and Growth Spout. Let's tackle Stuck in the Ringer first, because this one isn't just disliked, it is infamous. It is one of the most frequently cited examples of Patrick's character being turned from a lovable doofus into a genuinely malicious and unhelpful friend. The episode begins simply enough. SpongeBob is getting out of the shower and, after a series of laughable slips, gets himself stuck in his laundry wringer. He's trapped and can't get out. Patrick shows up and SpongeBob asks for help. A normal friend, even a dumb one, would try to help. But this version of Patrick, in stupidity, thinks SpongeBob wants to be stuck. So he grabs a bottle of Forever Glue and permanently sticks SpongeBob into the wringer. There you go, buddy. Now you're stuck forever. From this point on, the episode is a painful struggle of SpongeBob's life being ruined by this ringer, and Patrick being completely oblivious and unhelpful. SpongeBob can't work at the Krusty Krab, causing chaos and getting himself fired. He can't eat ice cream because the ringer is blocking his throat. He can't enjoy a single activity at the carnival, while Patrick has the time of his life, winning prizes and rubbing it in SpongeBob's face. The misery just keeps piling on until SpongeBob, understandably, finally snaps. He yells at Patrick, telling him that he's ruined his life and that it's all his fault because of the Forever Glue. Patrick runs off crying, and this is where the episode delivers its most notorious and hated scene. A crowd gathers, and instead of sympathizing with SpongeBob, who has been tortured for the entire episode, they turn on him. A random fish named Sandals points at SpongeBob and says, with utter seriousness, "You know, kid, your body isn't the problem, it's your heart. You deserve what you've gotten." It is one of the most mean-spirited and out-of-place lines in the entire history of the show. The entire town shuns SpongeBob for having a completely justified emotional breakdown. The resolution is just as frustrating. Patrick feels a little bad, finds SpongeBob in a deep depression watching TV static, and starts crying. His tears miraculously melt the glue. They realize this, cry together, and SpongeBob is freed. They hug it out, only for the ringer to fall from the sky and trap both of them. Patrick's final line, "Hey, should I get the glue?" It shows he learned absolutely nothing. The episode tries to sell a message about friendship and forgiveness, but it completely fails because Patrick is never held accountable for his actions, and SpongeBob is punished for having valid feelings. Is this episode truly that bad? Yep, tight. 1,000 times, yes. It assassinates Patrick's character, turning him into an unsympathetic monster. It tortures SpongeBob physically and emotionally, family and then has the audacity to blame him for it. The "you deserve it" line is unforgivable. The 4.2 rating is, in my opinion, far too high. This is bottom tier SpongeBob, a miserable, frustrating experience from start to finish. It's a 1.5, easily. There are almost no redeeming qualities here. The other episode at 4.2 is Growth Spout. And while it's not as emotionally scarring as Stuck in the Ringer, it is a prime example of Mr. Krabs' character being twisted into its ugliest form. The story revolves around Pearl, who suddenly goes through a massive teenage growth spurt. She becomes gigantic, her body bursting out of her bed, and she is overcome with an insatiable hunger. She needs food, and she needs it now. Mr. Krabs, her father, is faced with a dilemma. He needs to feed his rapidly growing, starving daughter. The obvious solution, of course, would be to take her to his own restaurant, the Krusty Krab, where he has an endless supply of food. But this is modern Mr. Krabs, whose defining trait is no longer just being cheap, but being so pathologically greedy that he will allow his own daughter to suffer if it means saving a few cents. He flatly refuses to use his own restaurant's inventory because it would deplete it. Instead, he sets off on a desperate, late-night quest to steal food from his neighbors. He sneaks into Mrs. Puff's garden and steals what he thinks are peanuts, but are actually her pet peanut worms. He breaks into Patrick's rock, finds his food is all made of sand, and steals his bowl of cereal. He then breaks into Squidward's house and completely ransacks his kitchen, stealing everything from cured meats to candied sea yams. After all of this, Pearl is still starving. His thieving spree ends in him breaking into SpongeBob's house, where he's finally confronted by SpongeBob and an enraged Squidward. To get Squidward to not call the police, Mr. Krabs is forced to give him his gold tooth. He's crying, not because his daughter is in pain, but because he lost a valuable item. The entire premise is built on Mr. Krabs being a terrible, neglectful father. His cheapness is the source of his daughter's agony. He'd rather commit multiple crimes and betray all of his friends and employees than spend a single dime of his own money or use his own resources to help his family. The episode tries to resolve this in a heartwarming way. SpongeBob tells Mr. Krabs he can make one Krabby Patty that tastes like a million by using a special secret ingredient. He makes the patty for Pearl, she eats it, her hunger is satisfied, and she shrinks back to her normal size. Mr. Krabs asks what the secret ingredient was. SpongeBob's answer? It was love, Mr. Krabs. It was love. Mr. Krabs laughs, then stops, as if realizing the truth. But this ending feels completely unearned. Love didn't solve the problem. A magical Krabby Patty did. And it doesn't excuse Mr. Krabs' appalling behavior throughout the entire episode. So is Growth Spout a bad episode? I think so. It takes Mr. Krabs' defining flaw and exaggerates it to the point of villainy. Watching Pearl suffer while her father chooses greed over her well-being is not fun. It's just sad and frustrating. The 4.2 rating feels about right. It's not as infuriating as Stuck in the Ringer, but it leaves you feeling just as bad. Moving down to a flat 4.0 rating, we have another tie, Slide Whistle Stooges and The Splinter. Let's start with Slide Whistle Stooges, an episode that weaponizes annoyance. The concept is painfully simple. SpongeBob and Patrick get slide whistles, and they proceed to play them, constantly, for everything. Every movement Squidward makes is accompanied by the rising and falling wee-woo of a slide whistle. When he picks up his newspaper, when he makes his bed, when he brushes his teeth, when he cleans his toilet. It is an auditory assault. The episode is designed to make the audience feel the exact same irritation that Squidward is feeling, and boy does it succeed. Driven mad by the incessant whistling, Squidward flees his house, running for his life. But SpongeBob and Patrick, in their blissful ignorance, think he's finally playing along with them and chase him all over Bikini Bottom, slide whistles in tow. The chase is relentless, and Squidward gets no peace. Finally, he snaps. He grabs SpongeBob's whistle and starts playing it himself, thinking he can turn the tables. But instead of being annoyed, SpongeBob and Patrick are delighted. SpongeBob declares that Squidward has the goods and is a maestro. This validation is all Squidward needs. His annoyance turns into obsession. He gets his own whistle, and the three of them become a public nuisance, a trio of slide whistling menaces. Squidward becomes the worst of them all. He harasses people in the street, scares a mother by pretending to be a baby in her carriage, and incites a full-on riot. An angry mob forms, complete with torches and pitchforks to hunt him down. His reign of terror ends in him hijacking a gasoline tanker truck, driving it recklessly through town, destroying both the Chum Bucket and the Krusty Krab, and launching it off a cliff in a fiery explosion. The people in the town cheer when it looks like he's dead. It's a shockingly dark turn. Of course, he survives. The slide whistle got lodged in his throat, and the sound helped rescuers find him, but he's left horribly injured in a hospital bed, only able to communicate through the very instrument that caused all the chaos. And SpongeBob and Patrick are there, of course, playing their slide whistle muscles in the hospital. The episode is just pure grating noise. There's very little in the way of clever jokes or fun humor. The first half is just annoying, and the second half is a bizarrely dark story about obsession and public endangerment. It's a one-note joke stretched out for 11 minutes, and that one note is designed to get on your nerves. It's a bad episode, but in a very specific way. It succeeds at what it sets out to do, which is to be annoying. But that's not a very noble goal for a cartoon. The 4.0 rating seems fair. It's a novelty episode that most people will find irritating rather than funny. Now for the other 4.0, an episode that is infamous for a very different reason. It's not annoying, it's just disgusting. I'm talking about The Splinter. This episode is the undisputed king of SpongeBob body horror. The story begins at the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob, in a moment of overexcitement, flings his spatula and it gets stuck in the ceiling. While trying to retrieve it, he slips on some tartar sauce and gets a splinter in his thumb. But this isn't just a tiny, normal splinter. The episode presents it in graphic, slow-motion detail. The wood pierces his skin, and his thumb immediately becomes red, swollen, and grotesquely inflamed. The rest of the episode is just SpongeBob trying and failing to deal with this incredibly painful and disgusting injury. He can't get it out himself. He can't hold his spatula. Squidward, rather than helping, decides to torment him. He tells SpongeBob that if Mr. Krabs finds out about the injury, he'll be sent home. This sends SpongeBob into a panic, as being sent home from work is his greatest fear. Squidward revels in his misery, flushing his hat and spatula down the toilet and gleefully waiting for Mr. Krabs to discover the injury. Desperate, SpongeBob calls the one person he thinks can help, Patrick. Patrick arrives in a fake doctor's uniform and proceeds to make everything 1,000 times worse. His treatment involves taking a giant wooden stake and a hammer and smashing the splinter even deeper into SpongeBob's thumb. This causes the thumb to swell to a monstrous size, a pulsating, purple, pus-filled nightmare. Patrick's solution to the swelling: he plops a pile of garbage on it, which only serves to infect it further. The visuals in this episode are genuinely nauseating. The close-ups on the swollen, infected thumb are the stuff of nightmares. It's not funny, it's just gross. The climax comes when Mr. Krabs finally sees the thumb. Even he is disgusted. Squidward faints at the sight of it. Mr. Krabs, with surprising competence, easily pulls the splinter out with his claw. There's a moment of relief, and then the infected thumb explodes. It erupts in a massive fountain of green pus that covers Mr. Krabs, who has to shield himself with an umbrella. It is one of the most repulsive scenes in the show's history. The episode ends with Squidward trying to injure himself to get workers' compensation, a gag that feels tacked on after the horror show we just witnessed. There's no debate on this one. The Splinter is a truly bad episode. It abandons comedy for cheap, disgusting shock value. The 4.0 rating feels shockingly high. It's a 1.0 in my book. It's a miserable, disgusting experience that offers nothing of value. It's just plain awful. Now we are truly entering the dregs, the bottom of the barrel. We have another tie at a 3.7 rating, featuring two of the most infamous episodes ever produced: One Course Meal and Gary in Love. Let's start with One Course Meal, an episode so dark and mean-spirited that it has been condemned by fans and critics alike for its handling of sensitive themes. The episode begins with Plankton launching another attack on the Krusty Krab. It's standard stuff until Pearl shows up. The moment Plankton sees her, he panics and flees in terror. It turns out Plankton has a deep primal fear of whales because, as he later explains, a pod of whales ate his entire family. Mr. Krabs, seeing this, doesn't feel a shred of pity. Instead, he sees an opportunity. For the next 16 days, Mr. Krabs dresses up in a Pearl costume and relentlessly terrorizes Plankton. He stalks him. He hides in his laboratory. He whispers threats about eating him. This isn't a prank. This is sustained psychological torture. Plankton becomes a complete wreck. He grows a long beard. His nails grow out. He's afraid to step into the light. He has a horrifying nightmare where he's chased and eaten by a demonic Pearl, ending up in her stomach acid with the ghosts of his dead relatives. The torment becomes so unbearable that Plankton gives up on life entirely. In the episode's most controversial scene, he lies down in the middle of the road, waiting for the 415 bus to run him over and end his misery. Let me just repeat that. This is a SpongeBob SquarePants episode where the plot is about Mr. Krabs bullying his rival to the point of a suicide attempt. SpongeBob is the only character who shows any concern. He confronts Mr. Krabs, telling him he's taking things too far, but Mr. Krabs is completely unrepentant. He laughs about Plankton's suffering, and justifies his actions by saying Plankton is his enemy. He is portrayed as a sadistic, cruel monster with no redeeming qualities. Seeing that Mr. Krabs won't listen, SpongeBob takes matters into his own hands. He goes to Plankton and, in an attempt to show him that everyone has fears, he reveals Mr. Krabs' secret fear, mimes. He also tells Plankton that it was Krabs in the suit all along. This empowers Plankton, who then gets his revenge by tormenting Mr. Krabs with a mime. The episode ends with SpongeBob scaring Plankton away with holographic whales, but the damage is done. The final shot is of Mr. Krabs still being bothered by the mime. This episode is, without a doubt, one of the worst things the show has ever created. It takes the rivalry between Krabs and Plankton, which was always cartoonish and fun, and turns it into something truly ugly and disturbing. Mr. Krabs is not a lovable cheapskate. He is a vicious bully who takes gleeful pleasure in driving someone to suicide. The handling of mental health and depression is appalling. It's played for laughs, which is just horrifying. The 3.7 rating is a joke. This episode should not exist. It is a 0.5, the lowest possible score. It is irredeemably bad. The other 3.7, Gary in Love, is hated for completely different reasons. It's not dark or cruel, it's just painfully boring and pointless. The episode sees SpongeBob taking Gary to the snail park, where Gary instantly falls in love with a female snail named Mary. However, Mary has a tough bully of a boyfriend who immediately gets jealous and threatens Gary. That's the entire conflict. Gary pines for Mary, and the bully snail wants to beat him up. SpongeBob, for his part, thinks Gary has been snail-napped when he sneaks out of the house to find Mary, leading to a pointless subplot of him trying to rescue his pet. The episode goes through some uninspired scenes. Gary looks for Mary. The bully snail and his gang look for Gary, causing some mild chaos at a pet store. There's a brief, unexciting chase scene. It all feels like it's just killing time. There are no good jokes. The new snail characters are completely one-dimensional, and the plot has zero stakes. The resolution is the final insult. Just as Gary and the bully snail are about to have their big showdown, it's revealed that Mary's owner is the long-lost love of a handsome man from a soap opera Gary was watching earlier. And that man has his own handsome snail, Billy, who Mary immediately falls in love with, completely forgetting about Gary. The bully snail and Gary, now united in their heartbreak, decide to become friends and go get some seaweed stew. SpongeBob watches on and remarks, "They grow up so fast." And that's it. The entire love story is rendered meaningless in the last 30 seconds by a random plot twist that comes out of nowhere. Nothing that happened in the episode mattered. Gary's quest was for nothing. The conflict with the bully was for nothing. It is the definition of a filler episode. It's a forgettable, bland, and poorly constructed story that just wastes 11 minutes of your life. The 3.7 rating is probably a reflection of just how dull it is. It's a different kind of bad from One Course Meal, but it's bad nonetheless. We've now reached the absolute bottom, 2 episodes tied with a miserable 3.3 rating. First up is Keep Bikini Bottom Beautiful, another classic Squidward torture episode, but this one is built on a foundation of pure nonsensical frustration. Squidward is having a beautiful day until he steps in some chewing gum. After a struggle, he gets it off and flicks it away, only for a police officer to see him. Despite Squidward's protest that he just stepped in it, the officer gives him a ticket for littering and sentences him to community service, picking up trash. Already the premise is annoying. He's being punished for something he didn't do. While cleaning the park, his arch-rival, Squilliam Fancyson, shows up to gloat. Squilliam reveals that the city built a glorious statue of him just for cleaning up Bikini Bottom in a week. This, of course, ignites Squidward's competitive spirit, and he vows to clean up the entire city in a single day to get his own statue. Squilliam then maliciously drops a tissue on the ground, which the same police officer immediately sees and gives Squidward another ticket for. The episode just keeps piling on the injustice. Squidward tries to dump his collected trash, but all the bins are full. He borrows a kid's wagon, and the entire neighborhood, thinking it's trash day, piles their garbage onto it. The kid's mom then shows up and beats Squidward to a pulp for stealing the wagon. And of course, the cop gives him another ticket for the mess. SpongeBob, in a rare moment of being helpful in one of these episodes, offers to get rid of the trash. Squidward agrees, and SpongeBob makes the trash disappear. Relieved, Squidward goes home, only to find his house is now made of garbage. SpongeBob, it turns out, just moved all the trash and rebuilt Squidward's house with it because the dump was closed. This is so incredibly stupid that it's hard to believe. The cop gives him more tickets. Squidward is furious. SpongeBob then tries to make it better by building Squidward a statue out of the garbage. The stench from the garbage statue melts Squilliam's statue, which is a small victory, but then the cop gives both SpongeBob and Squidward tickets for their illegal garbage statue. The episode is just a relentless parade of Squidward being punished by an incompetent and malicious police officer and an impossibly stupid SpongeBob. There's no logic, no fairness, and no real comedy. It's just watching a character suffer for 11 minutes for no reason. Is it that bad? Yeah, nah, it's frustrating from beginning to end. It's another episode that mistakes cruelty and frustration for humor. The 3.3 rating is well-deserved. It's a nonsensical, mean-spirited mess that does nothing but get on your nerves. And finally, we have arrived at our last episode, the other 3.3, and arguably one of the most hated and infamous episodes in the show's entire run, A Pal for Gary. If one-course meal was the peak of Mr. Krabs' cruelty, this is the absolute pinnacle of SpongeBob's stupidity and neglect. SpongeBob feels guilty for leaving Gary alone all day while he's at work, so he decides to get him a pet to keep him company. He finds a street vendor selling cute, fluffy little creatures called Puffy Fluffs. The vendor explicitly warns him that these creatures are extremely dangerous and hostile toward other pets. SpongeBob completely ignores her warnings, grabs a green Puffy Fluff, and runs home without paying. He introduces the new pet, Puffy Fluffy, to Gary. The moment SpongeBob's back is turned, the cute little creature transforms into a hideous, sharp-toothed monster and threatens Gary. But whenever SpongeBob looks, it turns back into its cute form. The entire episode is a repeating cycle of this. Puffy Fluffy terrorizes, abuses, and tries to eat Gary. Gary tries to defend himself, and every single time, SpongeBob walks in at the exact wrong moment and blames Gary for everything. He accuses Gary of being jealous, of being mean, of ruining his dinner. He punishes Gary for being the victim of relentless abuse. He puts them to bed together, and over the course of the night, Puffy Fluffy sheds its skin and grows into a giant, grotesque monster with multiple snapping tongues. It chases Gary all over the house, destroying the library, setting it on fire, and trying to devour him whole. And through all of this, SpongeBob sleeps peacefully, dreaming of his grandmother's meatballs. The climax is SpongeBob wakes up, sees his house is a wreck, and immediately blames Gary. He storms into his exercise room to find the giant monster holding Gary in its fanged mouth, about to eat him alive. And SpongeBob, looking at this horrific scene, still doesn't get it. He yells, "Gary, you put Fluffy down right now! Bad boy, Gary." It was such a profoundly stupid and character-destroying moment that fans talk about it all the time. He is literally watching a monster about to eat his pet, and he scolds the pet. The monster then attacks SpongeBob, and only then does Gary get the chance to save the day, using his cowboy skills to lasso the monster and chase it out of the house. And even after all of that, after being attacked himself, SpongeBob still blames Gary for chasing his new friend away. The episode ends with SpongeBob bringing Gary to work with him so he won't be lonely anymore, having learned absolutely nothing. This episode is terrible. It turns him into a blind, neglectful, and cruel pet owner who is incapable of seeing the obvious truth right in front of him. It's a horrifying animal abuse story played for laughs. If you enjoyed this video and want to see me break down the most disturbing moments in SpongeBob, click the video on the screen.